This week on The Breakout, we're talking DOGE and cuts to the federal cyber workforce. Welcome to The Breakout. I'm Mehta.
And I'm Michael Marrow.
Michael's here because he put together a pretty in-depth story on DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, everyone in Washington's favorite friend. Michael, you looked through FY26 budget documents. Well, you and our partners at the American Enterprise Institute who helped us out with some of the research on this. And you found that in the FY26 budget documents, there's about $11.1 billion marked off as savings and efficiencies from DOGE. What does that actually mean?
Right. So, earlier this year, we had some DOGE executive orders from the White House. And the Pentagon essentially took those two executive orders and applied them to the budget, to specific programs. So going through the budget documents, you'll see references to three things, essentially, three main groups. The first is the civilian workforce. We've seen mass layoffs and, the deferred resignation program. That's one target. The second is contracting services. Think federally funded research development centers, consulting firms, those types of things, called advisory and assistance services. Those are cut. And then the third is travel. So these are the main sources of savings. And if you look through the budget documents, when the budget came out, I noticed that they all had very similar language pointing to, one of these two DOGE executive orders. So you'll see buried in program descriptions throughout documents for all the military services, references to these, and saying, this program was cut by X amount for this reason.
Yeah. So 11.1 billion is the number that we came up with. That doesn't quite actually line up with numbers that have come out of the Pentagon. The Air Force has said they've saved about 10 billion. Obviously, it doesn't make sense if that's all Air Force to our number. The Pentagon itself has said it's actually 13.8 billion. How do we account for the differences in these figures?
Right. So, take that Air Force figure. A lot of that can be understood as what's known as cost avoidance. So that's saying, if we have a contract with a ceiling for X amount, we're not going to reach that ceiling anymore. We're going to cancel it. So that money we were going to spend in the future, we're not going to spend anymore. But then, there are real savings, too, specifically when it comes to workforce reductions, cutting contracts. Those are real concrete types of savings. We've seen, contract cancellations, things of that nature. So, it should be said that this is for FY26. That doesn't begin until October. So some of these can be better understood as projections. But we've already seen, a lot of these workforce effects, take place. And so you can probably safely assume that many of these cuts are in effect now. But, that $11.1 billion, that's what's in the documents. If you add it all up. And, the Pentagon itself in a budget overview that came out just recently, they put that number as somewhere close to 13.8 billion. So, as we note in the story, what's in the budget documents may not be inclusive of all DOGE savings that can be claimed across the Pentagon, but they are what's in the budget in black and white.
And in some ways, that makes it the most official number that we can really get at. Let's talk about the future because, DOGE came in, did a lot of work right away, and there seems to be some question of, what next?
Right. So in case you were under the impression that DOGE was a one-off, that doesn't seem to be the case. The budget overview talks about institutionalizing a lot of these DOGE processes and, pouring through these documents, doing PDF searches line by line for, Department of Government Efficiency. Hill staffers don't want to be doing that. They want the granularity. They want to see how DOGE is really making an impact. And it is significant, the Trump administration, its first year, making these kind of tangible changes to military spending. But going forward, the Trump administration has said that this is going to be, that DOGE's work is going to continue, that, its processes will become more formal, more institutionalized. So maybe next year, in next year's budget, we'll get a more comprehensive overview of what DOGE can claim. For right now, we've got what's in the budget for 26.
All right. Thanks, Michael. When we come back after the break, Lee Ferran is going to join me to talk about some news ahead of Augusta TechNet.
At Leonardo DRS, our agility helps bring the ability to dominate in any scenario, on any platform, helping our warfighters accomplish the mission and get home safely. Leonardo DRS, our agility, your advantage.
Okay, Lee is joining me now. We're going to talk about a story that our reporter Carly Welch filed before she headed down to Augusta for the TechNet conference, which is happening this week. Lee, the story looked at some of the potential risks of cuts to the cybersecurity workforce across the federal government, and then especially for the Defense Department.
Right. So she was doing a little check-in on how the workforce is doing, months after the DOGE initiatives and everything to streamline the government. Cyber agencies have lost personnel, some percentage of personnel. They've been subject to kind of partial hiring freezes. But she spoke to some experts, and they kind of were divided on how this was going to go. In the short term, they were worried about some risks. In the long term, not a little more optimistic.
Yeah, I found that really interesting. Let's focus on the short term right now. So what did we find?
Yeah, so in the short term, they kind of put their risks in 3 buckets, really. The first one is maybe the most obvious, and that is if you're losing people who are currently defending networks or currently probing adversary networks or just maintaining IT, stuff like that. Yeah. That's an issue. You have to backfill those positions. There's a critical need there. If you ask the Pentagon, they haven't fired anyone who will create a national security emergency or anything. And at least publicly, we have no indication anything has gone horribly wrong yet.
Right.
The other one, though, is a little more in the background is working with allies. A lot of cyber operations are international. America using allies in the UK and elsewhere. Those are relationships. And so if you lose people who are the point person for that relationship, you have to rebuild it. And finally, just internal morale. As anywhere else, if you've seen colleagues go to the door, that's going to be a little demoralizing. The experts said they were a little concerned about how it was going to affect everyone who didn't leave, anyone who's still there.
Yeah, what's interesting about all those things is, to me, those are short-term issues that become long-term issues. But the experts were actually fairly optimistic about long-term, that things will kind of sort themselves out.
But essentially, they were saying they referenced General Paul Stanton, who's the head of DISA. He told lawmakers in May, this gives the departments a chance to ruthlessly realign, essentially to do what the federal government hopes to be more efficient, to cut waste and stuff like that, but also to reorient around the modern mission. And the experts said they were confident that the agencies would be able to do that after a while, and also that they were confident in the leadership of the cyber workforce, that they know what they're doing, they know how to refill these positions, they'll hire back people that they need to, and in the long term, they think things will be fine.
All right, well, in the short term, Carly is down in Augusta. Again, check the site for all of our coverage from TechNet. And make sure you like and subscribe to The Breakout to get it delivered directly to you.
And if you listen to podcasts, we're on your favorite podcasting platform. Just search for us there.
I'm Mehta.
And I'm Lee Ferran.
Thanks for watching.